Being the founder of the largest psychedelic company in the world, what do you think is going to be the biggest research breakthrough that we see in psychedelics of 2023? Hey everyone, welcome to the Traded Black podcast. As usual, I am your host, Shad Dales, and today we are talking psychedelics, and why not? Some big news pertaining to some of the leading companies in the space, and especially Atai Life Sciences. So no other better person to bring into our podcast today, and welcome him back to the podcast. He is the founder of Atai Life Sciences, which trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol ATAI. Christian Angermayer, great to see you. Happy New Year. How are things?
Great to see you again. Happy New Year. Well, the reason why we're here is that Atai had a readout which didn't fully meet the prospected endpoint. So there could have been a better start to the year, but it's also not the end of the world. And I think that's the reason why we're meeting to a little bit go more into details of the readout for our ketamine.
Yeah, 100%. We've had a lot of feedback in the last couple of days from our viewers and followers on Twitter. Ben, lead financial writer, good to see you, sir. How are things?
Things are very well. Glad to be here with Christian Angermayer to talk psychedelics. No other place I'd rather be.
All right, so let's get right into it. Let's tackle the elephant in the room. Biggest company in the space right now. Just before Christmas, Atai Life Sciences announced two-part results for Curis Therapeutics Phase 1 trial of Cure-101, which is designed to disrupt current options for opioid use disorder. Cure-101 dosing was generally well tolerated. Analgesic effects of Cure-101 were less than those with oxycodone, and Atai shares declined as a result, as you said, Christian. So given that this is still the early days of Phase 1 and this trial was one of your leading trials within your pipeline, do these results diminish at all the potential of Cure-101 going forward? And I guess more importantly, what have you learned from all this?
Okay, so I give one answer because then the second trial came out right after Christmas or New Year's Eve, and it was the readout for the ketamine trial. Yeah, and I think both, I know the world always likes, and especially in sort of more challenged stock markets times like we are in now, likes to be black and white. Okay, a trial was successful, a trial was failed, and sort of these two trials, you can say they did not reach the intended endpoints we defined. By the way, and it's us who defined these endpoints, what we wanted to show, but we learned a lot for both substances. Yeah, and they definitely not dead or whatever. We take the learnings away. For example, with Cures, we used sort of the pain trial, but the ultimate goal is to help people to get off opioids. Yeah, or with our ketamine. Yeah, this is maybe the more important one because it was sort of one of our really late stage ones. To remember people, what happened is sort of the main reason why our ketamine from our point of view is valuable is because it has a potential for at-home use. So it would have been easy, I think, again, hypothetically, if we would have taken a higher dose to show the intended antidepressant effect. Yeah, but that was not, it's always important to remember what was the trial supposed to show. Yeah, and we tried to find the balance where our ketamine is little to zero dissociative. And by the way, we did achieve that. So our 60 milligram dose of our ketamine was practically not dissociative, not distinguishable from placebo, which is very important because that's the path for at-home use. But then, unfortunately, that dose, we also saw that it did not hit statistical significant change versus placebo on the 24 hours, which is a randomly picked number. But then positively, we saw encouraging signals of efficacy across the timeline still up to 2 weeks. Okay. So practically, it's a mixed. So I definitely would not, and again, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. We didn't meet the primary endpoints, but at the same time, there was efficacy. Yeah. At the same time, we've shown that there might be an at-home use, and we now need to digest because, obviously, there is always the headline, but then there is way more details if you work through the details of all the data points you have, and we need to digest it, and then we plan with our next quarterly update. We plan to then give more guidance. What is the next step for the drug? Same, by the way, for Cures. So practically both, I would call it mixed outcomes. Yeah, not the intended ones, but also both drugs are definitely not bad. Yeah, and now we're seeing like how can we sort of still achieve what we want to achieve with them.
Right.
So the perception neuroscience trial, of course, PCN 101 for ketamine derivative, that didn't quite meet the endpoint, like you said. But your atai stock was down about 40% that day. It was obviously very it was a negative reaction based on that, because obviously biotech is very results related. But what is your message to investors who perhaps don't have the context that this was still just a phase 2A study, really to establish the dosing ranges, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that the drug doesn't work or whatnot? It did show some good results on different timelines, just not one of the main timelines. So do you think investors perhaps lost context with that and reacted a little bit too negatively to what still could be a very viable trial?
For sure. I mean, in short version, the answer is for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, already, because like if you cynically say we were trading already that low, that even if you would completely write off our ketamine, again, which is not justified to do, it's exactly how you said, it's sort of a mixed result and we need to consider next step. Yeah, but like, even if you would write it down, like we have such a big pipeline and cash, so the 40% didn't make sense. But we're living in a world at the moment where biotech is anyway still sort of a very like not favorable asset class. Like there's not a lot of liquidity. People might be scared about the headlines. Again, not saying the media make mistakes, but we live in the world where things are shortened. So I read some headlines out there like, oh yeah, our ketamine trial failed. Yeah, and that might have led investors to say, oh my God, like. But even in normal times, I would have said, look, 40%. Like we have such a broad pipeline. Yeah, and it's just 1 out of 7 actually clinical programs plus our whole preclinical pipeline. So even in different times, 40% would have made sense. But anyway, it is what it is. I think we need to, this is why we're here, by the way, like we need to communicate more.
Right.
We need to take investors onto our thought process, so to say, and then hopefully show, again, the short version, again, neither cures nor our ketamine are dead. So we're digesting the data, and we saw both. There's a lot of positive sort of data in both trials, and it's just now, what do we do next? And I give you a good example of what could be next. Like if you look at our ketamine, it's also a question for whom is it interesting. So we said in the release, we're looking at partnership options because like for us, it was really to show, okay, is there a path for at home use? Because then it really makes a difference, because Spravato is already on the market. Yeah, but Spravato is still bound to a doctor, so is normal ketamine, so the racemic ketamine. So we said, look, for atai, yeah, this could be a killer drug if we get similar-ish antidepressant effects and at the same time at home use. There might be a pharma company, though, who says, look, I want to go head-to-head with J&J, even if it's just for use with doctors. That's a different strategy. Like, sort of, we could have talks like this. I'm just giving potential that people understand a little bit that it's never a simple answer, but in a good way. Like,
right,
sort of, we always say, what do you want to show? Where does it make sense? Where does it make commercially sense for us? And again, for us, maybe with sort of a limited amount overall of resources, we want our ketamine, if we bring it to market, it needs to be a killer sort of drug, like with at home use, whatever. Again, but like a big pharma company might say, you know what, I want to rub it into J&J. Yeah, I'm happy if I'm just having a competitor for Spravato. By the way, we would need to prove that, but my personal opinion is, like, if we go up the dosage of Spravato, that's going to be equally or better. Yeah, but again, then it would be just a competitor to Spravato. But somebody might say, let's do that. Yeah, and so on. Like, so
well, I want to ask that. One could ask, why wasn't there a higher dosage, I guess, going into these trials to begin with? So
well, that was the fickle thing, because if we would have gone much higher, we would have seen that disassociative effect. At some point, you're going to get it. That's the assumption. So again, another option, I just always have to say, we don't know yet, and we're going to come out with guidance soon. I just want to give people the thought process, what are considerations. By the way, anybody could have, like, obviously that's the other answer. Like, is there a higher doses which is still disassociative, which is still not disassociative, and the 60 milligram, obviously there were some studies we were referring to, so we had reasons to pick the 60, but maybe we could try 90 milligrams. So it is a little bit about it. That is the main message, for drug development. Like, it's not always black and white, and sometimes it's science. Sometimes you have to do a trial, and as you said, Benjamin, it was just, meaning it's phase 2A is advanced, but like, this is science. Like, you do trials to find out things, to test a hypothesis.
Yeah.
And then there is no bad in doing another trial, and then adjust based on what you just learned. So,
right, and it does sound like the results were at least good enough where you can still try the higher dosage. It wasn't like you didn't see the results at all on that, and that you're scrapping it completely. You're still positive on the trial overall, but you'll have to try another dosage. Is that fair?
Exactly. So now you need to say, okay, you lose a little bit of time, like you need to invest more money. So there is a bigger sort of like portfolio decision to be made. But these are exactly the questions, and considerations we're just going through with our subsidiary Perception, and then gonna come up with hopefully some news. But again, it's very important. That's drug development. So there is nothing sort of bad in it. Like, again, obviously we all would have wished it would have been a much clearer outcome. That's what you aim for, But again, the outcome was also not that both for Cures and arketamine, that these drugs are dead.
So you still feel very confident. Of course, you're going to say that. But for investors that start to question about, the viability of the current pipeline or psychedelic medicine in general, your response to investors would be what?
Well, I'm equally confident than I have been before, again, because like, that is a normal, I would say it's not the end of the world, it's a setback, and that happens in drug development all the time. I wish, and we're optimizing to have as little as possible setbacks. Like, in an ideal world, you would just like go from one sort of perfect readout to the other, but it has happened, it's gonna happen, but overall, we shouldn't forget, like, we know, and I come back over here, compare Atai's pipeline to a cancer pipeline, whatever, we know much more about these drugs already in a good way. So maybe like people, that it could be also like people, because we know much more, they applying a higher sort of, how you say in English, like a more, they expect even more from us. So, and we try to match or to meet that expectations. But again, short version, there is zero reason to sort of discount now the pipeline or whatever. And by the way, all of our drugs, the 7 clinical drugs we have, plus then all the preclinical ones, they are non-correlated. So even if one drug like arketamine is, as in this trial, giving mixed sort of results, and again, but it's always bound to the trial design. Again, what it was supposed to show. But even if one drug is reading out mixed, it has zero conclusion for the other drugs.
We talked about this last week, Ben, in our podcast about how this is more of an institutional play right now, as far as the industry itself versus less than, say, retail. What are some of the questions that you get asked, from institutions pertaining to the industry? And have you had much feedback based on the recent results as to what's happened?
Well, I don't know if that's really the case. I think it's both. It's like, it's hopefully, or at least we want to be appealing both to retail and to institutional. I think it is very appealing to retail as well, because like, and I had one call with one retail shareholder because he DM'd me on Twitter today, and like, I try to have as much communication as we can, and I get very like encouraging messages every day, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, about people who have their own experiences with psychedelics and sort of their own healing experiences in countries where it's legal, and they sort of looking forward, or they're encouraging us for our work because they know these sort of substances work. So I think it is a retail play because people can relate both to the indications. Mental health, we had this so often before, is like sort of the number one problem out there, but also they can, or many can relate to our pipeline because they might have read about it, they might have seen the Netflix documentary, How to Change Your Mind. They might have even tried it for themselves to find healing. So it's a retail play as much as an institutional play, because obviously we are very sort of doing legit science, drug development, or whatsoever. So to your question, what is sort of I would say, what is the biggest question mark of institutions? I would say they still trying to get their head around that most of our substances will require a therapist, which I think is partly the great thing, because I think our mind is different than having cancer. So I think the sort of human touch will be necessary. As you know, we do actually try to reduce that or make it sort of obviously as commercially viable as possible with the use of digital therapeutics. But my personal belief is that for like sort of the core healing process, for at least some of our pipeline drugs, you will always need a therapist for the trip. And it's good that you need a therapist, because that human touch is part of the healing process. So some institutional investors who more maybe in their sort of portfolio look at, I don't know, cancer drugs or whatever, where you pop a pill and then you're either fine or not, they sort of trying a little bit to get their head around that sort of therapy need, or that need of a therapist, which for me is zero hurdle. So when I said that often before, like I spoke to so many therapists, they all looking forward to using the stuff, and I think there will be way more demand than therapists. So, and we will. I don't think we have any sort of, let's call it, rollout problem.
Why is that an important question, though, for institutions to ask about therapists? Why do they inquire about that?
They feel that that the need of a therapist could hold back, or could at least slow down the rollout. That is one question we often get.
Gotcha.
Because it's not like they more used, okay, there is a cancer drug and a pharma company knows exactly, send it to pharmacies, like give it out. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of, they're not saying that this doesn't work. They're just saying, oh, it could be slower in the adoption. And I'm like,
gotcha.
No, I'm definitely not worried about that. Like, I'm worried that we have too few, or is the English term, therapists in the world, and that quickly sort of they will be booked out for years. And then hopefully, also my prediction is that once psychedelics are approved, you will see actually more people become a therapist, because it's more fulfilling to be a therapist if you finally have the tool set to really sort of heal and help your patients. But anyway, but that is one of the I don't know the critiques, but questions we get.
Go ahead, Ben. You're going to ask something about the locked up shares.
Yeah, atai had a lockup, Apeiron, in which you are the chair of that company, of the family office. They had a lockup of shares that lasted 24 months, which was initiated last December. Not last December, but December of 2021. And obviously at this time, the lockout is still many months away. But if the lockout happened tomorrow or next month, would Apeiron be looking to perhaps pair their position to rebalance risk, or are you still actually looking to add additional shares potentially in the near future?
Yeah, so very clear. First of all, Apeiron is my own family office, so it's 100% my own capital.
Yeah.
So I signed the lockup in December 2021 for 2 years voluntarily. I wouldn't have need to do it. It was a completely voluntary step. I could have sold atai shares at any point. Like pre-IPO, people wanted more shares. I could have sold. The IPO, different time, like biotech at high, like people want many. As you remember, the IPO was highly, highly oversubscribed. If I wanted, I could have sold shares then. I actually bought in the IPO. And then would have not needed to sign that lockup. So at any point in time, I could have sold shares, and I didn't. I actually bought shares. I'm also considering, because I think the share price, meaning I have windows where I can buy, because I'm the chairman, but I'm considering buying. Like, I can tell anybody, like, if I would have wanted to sell at $15, $20, I could have sold, I didn't. And it's really honest, like, obviously people say, it's just saying that now, but I really do not regret not selling, because I hopefully that comes across in this podcast and in many other conversations. I have not believed in anything which I did in my life that much as I do in psychedelics especially, and in generally in that mission to find solutions for the mental health crisis. Yeah, and yes, we're going all, and by the way, I feel it. So I see that when people post on Twitter or on Reddit or whatever, I feel it. The share price is shit. Like, it's like, I'm not happy about it, but it's like, it's to big degrees also sort of market dependent. Yeah. And so I'm going with all the other shareholders through that sort of dire phase of biotech. Yeah. But I have never believed in anything as much as I do in atai and in the mission we have and in the substances we develop. Yeah, and I'm, even when the lockup expires, and I can already happy say now I'm happy to prolong it early, like, because I'm gonna be still chairman of atai, and I'm gonna be still owner of all of my shares in 3, 4, and 5 years from now, because that is a big mission, and I know, but I'm not doing it for charity or not stupid. Like, sort of, I know that when we succeed, and I'm extremely confident, still equally like before on our pipeline, this will be a super double-digit billion-dollar company, because unfortunately the problem we want to solve is huge. Yeah, and but
why are you more confident and more excited for this opportunity than say other companies that you've been invested in? Like, you talk with great passion, but you think convincingly or confidently that it's only not a matter of if, but when that you will get approved with one of these trials from the FDA?
So what is the two components of my confidence? The one is, like, again, I always add these, unfortunately, because I don't want to sound cynical, but like, unfortunately, the problem is really, really massive. I can just repeat that, and I sound like a broken record, but like,
good point.
Everybody of us knows somebody with a mental health issue.
Yeah,
I deeply, meaning it's already now the #1 problem in the world, or in the healthcare world, by number of patients. So more than 1 billion people have a mental health issue. However, this is, from my point of view, the number is way too low, because, like, meaning people are still not coming forward. It's getting better, it's getting destigmatized, but like, not everybody who has a mental health issue is coming forward. Then unfortunately, I also believe that the world we're living in and we're building is very bad for our mental health. So I think more and more people will get a mental health issue. So for many reasons, it's already #1 disease, and it's just growing. So looking at it as an entrepreneur, again, I don't want to sound cynical, the bigger the problem you solve, the more you will be rewarded. So that's one side of the equation.
Good point.
And then the second side of the equation is, as you just said, I'm extremely confident, so that I would add, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when at least several of our pipeline drugs will be successful and on the market, because we have these massive anecdotal evidence. Even for our ketamine, I just want to repeat, like, it was the balance to find, which was not perfectly fulfilled between a non-dissociative dose and enough of antidepressant effect, but there were effects, and so on. And then obviously the compass data before was even better, like sort of we know, and then you have new drugs, like we have an MDMA derivative in development. We have a DMT analog in development. So we know so much about these drugs. That doesn't, by the way, I want to say it again, knowing so much is, at the end, is super important, because this gives you the confidence that we're getting these drugs to approval. However, that does not, as we have just seen, exclude us from, let's say, bumps on the road, if that makes sense.
I have to ask this, though. Were you surprised at all on the news that came out last month?
Yeah, I was disappointed. No. Look, we were very much like, I was disappointed, full stop. Like, I couldn't say it. I could say it. So, again, because we designed it with not just best intention is not, but like best knowledge as well. Yeah. But again, that's science. But I would compare it. I think we know it's like in a multi-year travel, we know exactly where we want to go, obviously approval, but also I think we know how to get there. But that does not exclude that there might be a little bit of a
peaks and valleys, as they say, right? Peaks and valleys.
Yeah. Now, speaking of your pipeline, Christian, I wanted to ask, with the benefit of hindsight, do you have a favorite molecule now that you expect to go the distance, or something like an EMP 01, which is your mDNA molecule, I believe. Like, is there a new favorite? And what happens inside like a biotech company when they have results perhaps that are not quite to expectations? How do they look at that to rebalance their expectations in the pipeline going forward?
I know the favorite question always comes up, and I always answer like it's a little bit like with children. And maybe now I say now I have like a favorite child because I really liked or do still like ketamine, but now the child came home with really bad grades for now, and we sit with, and now it's like, okay, we need to do a little bit of tutoring, like sort of. So it's hard always because we compose the pipeline for a reason. So it's not, oh, this is my favorite of the day now, and that's my favorite of the day then. Like, we have a reason. So if I go one step back, what's the reason? The reason is that our brain is as complex as it's beautiful, and there will never be a one size fits all. So what we want to do, we want to deliver actually a multitude, hopefully, of approved therapies, like a toolbox to psychiatrists and therapists. And then they can decide, okay, this person suffers from trauma, so I might go for DMT. This person has more treatment-resistant depression, I might go for psilocybin. Like, it really depends on the history of the patient, what is the diagnosis, what is the root cause, whatever, yeah. And there is a reason why we have the whole pipeline and why it makes sense and why we're actually confident on all of them or why we're doing all of them, yeah. There's always these. But that's not like, that is not an economic answer. Like I always say, like psilocybin, which we have via our stake in Compass Pathways, is sort of special because it's kind of I always jokingly say a little bit like the broad spectrum antibiotics. Yeah, and it's more what people know and what is also sort of, you can almost use for everything. I mean, Compass has a really broad pipeline of also indications. But then you have ibogaine, which I think is really important because I think the opioid crisis is sort of ripping America apart, and I think that's the solution. So, but that's more emotional answers than sort of economic answers to the question.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up too, do you speak to Cathy Wood much? I know that she's had, a little bit of a challenging year to say the least, obviously, with how the portfolio and some of the recommendations that she's making, maybe some questionable calls on Tesla. But one thing I do like is how she invests in innovation, and atai being one of them, and increased their positions. So if you're having those conversations in a room and investors are just curious to know what she likes about the company and why she increases her position, could you share with us some of the feedback that she provides as to what she likes about the company?
So I'm a big fan of Cathy, exactly for the reasons you said. She's I think, the perfect sort of, how you say, pioneer, or like also like for innovation. And I know, meaning, by the way, like myself, like my whole portfolio, yeah, even outside of atai in tech and biotech, I really believe in innovation and disruptive technologies. And it's not an easy time to be in. And I know she gets a lot of critique, but she stays true to what she's believing, which is also what I believe personally. So I sort of really sort of admire her. Yeah, as she's an investor, both in atai and Compass, I don't want to sort of take away. I mean, I feel if she wants to say something, then she should say it. I'm very grateful, that she's an investor in both companies.
Makes sense. Have you looked at, like, when I look at the industry right now, there's been a few mergers and acquisitions that have taken place recently. And with the hefty war chest, like, is it something that you would consider in the near term, especially when you look at the levels of what a lot of these companies are trading at right now, and ideally you could acquire something for a very favorable price? Like, is that something that has crossed, I guess, the company's mind right now?
Yeah, so two answers. So first of all, I always can remind people we were the very first one to sort of bring back the ideas of bringing sort of back psychedelics into the medical world. Not the first one ever, because like you have the 60s, whatever, but like in this century, yeah, and in the medical context. So, and for like a year or two, 2018, 19, we, and if I say we, it's atai and Compass together, we were sort of the only ones out there sort of scooping up patents, scooping up intellectual property. And we kind of had free choice, because we were the only ones with cash, what we want to do and not. So in generally, I'm very, very happy with sort of the pipeline of atai, including Compass, because we were able to get every important molecule, every important IP out there. So that's the one side. The other side is, and by the way, it's a good reminder, we have actually in the last report, as of the last reporting, we have $304 million cash.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we have 160 million of undrawn credit lines we have.
Right.
Yeah. And we have the stake in Compass Pathways, which is also worth around $90 million as of today. So by the way, we're trading below that value, which is insane. In any case, even if people were disappointed about the R-ketamine outcome, and I think I have said enough that a little bit of disappointment is warranted, but not as much as people have. But still then, like, you practically get our entire pipeline, and we didn't even discuss the preclinical stuff we have. Yeah, but like the other 6 clinical trials, you get the entire pipeline kind of for free, which doesn't make sense, which just shows how distorted the biotech market is. But having said that, we're in an amazing position.
That's an understatement too, right?
Yeah, but there are other companies who suffer the same fate, and I think it will change. So I think it's actually an amazing opportunity. But having said that, to your question, so we are in an extremely strong position with almost 500 million in cash plus credit lines available to be a consolidator, to scoop up things. And that is actually one of the strengths of Atai. We have a very,
so it is something you're considering or have looked at.
The answer is we're always considering it, because it's practically, if you look at the history of Atai, we are built as sort of kind of this roll-up model. Yeah. So I wouldn't disagree, and obviously, we stock market listed, but I wouldn't disagree that times like that are especially sort of fortunate, as much as our own share price is painful, but they're especially fortunate if you as a company have so much cash as we have, you might be able to do great deals, and we're always looking at opportunities.
Now, last question over here, since you talked about the biotech industry, what sectors or perhaps stocks are you invested in outside of your own, Apeiron investment group and portfolio? What are you investing personally in the biotech sectors or companies, and what might they be?
So people might think I'm stupid because like I really stick to my own stuff because I so much believe in it. And obviously we have a big, actually non-listed biotech portfolio. So, but I don't have, let's say, other sort of non-Apeiron portfolio companies. But I think there are great ones out there. I'm actually thinking if I should do like a bit of a portfolio. I think honestly, like meaning aside or including Atai, I think that's what we're gonna look back on somewhere in this time. Nobody knows when exactly this phase will end, but gonna regard it as one of the best buying opportunities in biotech ever.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
I think you have a point. Yeah, I think ultimately it's people are being educated a lot on how biotech works, right? And to your point too, it's just like we look at this as make or break, and it's not necessarily make or break at the same time, but it's patience, and it does take time. But to your point, being confident, I think there's reasons to that because there's a global problem for mental health right now, and it's so underserved at the moment. I hope the viewers actually found this information helpful. Leave a comment below. If there's any more questions that you want to ask Christian, leave us a comment below. Let us know what that is. We'll reach out to Christian, and he'll give us some feedback and answer all of your questions. As well, subscribe to our channel. Click on that bell for notifications and share this video to your network. Christian, I know you're a busy person, but I appreciate the time to check in. Appreciate the update, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everybody who's watching, and I'm sure it's going to be better than the start.
Good stuff. Appreciate it. Let's keep in touch.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. 2023 is here, and right now a lot of uncertainty pertaining to the markets, especially new emerging industries like crypto, cannabis, psychedelics, and more. So leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, what are the questions that you want asked, and most importantly, what's the information that you want to learn. Once we produce these videos, then share this to your network, subscribe to our channel, and click on that bell for all notifications because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.